57. And for the NFL Divisional round, check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at an even bigger payout with DraftKings step-up same-game parlays. Boost your NFL winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code SOTS. New customers can bet just $5 on the NFL Divisional round and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the promo code SOTS. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. And if you or someone you know is dealing with a gambling crisis, crisis counseling is available by calling 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537. You have to be 21 years or older to play and a resident in Louisiana. $200 in free bets, valid one per new customer. Minimum $5 deposit, minimum $5 bets, promo code required. $200 issued as free bets that expires 7 days after being awarded. Free bets must be wagered one time and stakes is not included in any returns or winnings. Step up same game parlays. One step up same game parlay token issued per eligible NFL playoff game. After opt-in, minimum $1 bet, max bets limited apply. Minimum 3 legs, each leg minimum minus 300 odds, total bets plus 100 odds or longer. Profits boosted up to 100%. Promotion offer period ends 2/12/23 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to know more, all you have to do is go to sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms. Hey, what's going on, sports fans? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. Welcome to the Gumbo Pie Sports Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Shouts out to everybody here. Much love to you. It is Divisional Round Sunday, and we are here on the Gumbo Pie getting you all prepared for that. But we also got to talk about Division Round Saturday and some of the games that took place and what teams advanced to their respective conference championships. But just want to let you know that the Gumbo Pie Sports Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp.com. Look, there's a lot of people dealing with mental situations, anxiety, depression, or what have you, and they may not have outlets that are available for you where you are. But the best thing about BetterHelp.com is they give you opportunities to get in touch with individuals online virtually. You'll be able to set up virtual sessions with respected and well put together counselors. Okay, so all you have to do is go to BetterHelp.com. You can use the promo code SOTS, and the link is also going to be available towards the end of the show. I'll make sure that I put the link in there. You can click on it, you answer the questionnaire, and they set you up with individuals that can help you, be able to deal with some of the things that you go through on a daily basis. All right, so shouts out to BetterHelp.com. Being a sponsor of the State of the Saints podcast, also the Gumbo Pie Sports podcast, as well as the Therapy Couch podcast. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. Let's talk about Divisional Round Sunday. They got a good slate of games, big matchup, a game that should have took place a couple weeks ago. Of course, we know about the tragic event that had happened on Monday night that caused that game to end in the first quarter. I'm talking about Damar Hamlin and the situation with that. These two teams, I'm talking the Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. And the reason why they didn't finish that game, has implications on where the AFC Championship game could possibly be played. Okay, we know that if the Cincinnati Bengals, they knock off the Buffalo Bills, then that means that the Cincinnati Bengals will go to Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. But if the Bills knock off the Cincinnati Bengals, then that means that the AFC Championship game will take place in Atlanta. So Atlanta will get themselves a championship game because Lord knows it's been a while since they had one. but all seriousness, man, these two teams, they match up really well. They both have really good quarterbacks that can get the job done. They got good running games. They got good sound defense. They can get opportunities to turn the ball over. They can get pressure on the quarterback. So this should be an interesting game, and we're going to be breaking that down just a little bit later. And of course, we know that the Dallas Cowboys will be going to Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round. Both teams looked impressive in the wild card round. Can't hate on the Dallas Cowboys for this. I mean, they smacked around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And also you look at you look at the 49ers who went up against the Seattle Seahawks, and they got the job done. Brock Purdy, a guy who was picked last in this year's draft, is doing everything but being Mr. Irrelevant, and he is now 6-0 as the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. So that should be an interesting game also. But let's go ahead and backtrack a little bit to Saturday's games. We had the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Kansas City Chiefs. As I get on, I'm gonna try to see if I can get on camera real quick. There I go. Hey everybody. But yeah, look, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs. This game I watched, and this was a game that could have really, in my honest opinion, got out of hand. Like if you looked at the first drive of Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he was wheeling and he was dealing. I mean, he was throwing jump passes. He was throwing side-on passes. He was doing all the things that Patrick Mahomes normally do in a game. But then all of a sudden, here comes former LSU Tiger Alden Key, actually rolled over the ankle of Patrick Mahomes. And man, I mean, you could hear a pin drop in that stadium. In Arrowhead, you can hear a pin drop because they recognize how special this guy actually is. And you know, you had a drive where Chad Henne came into the game. A lot of people were concerned about that, but Chad Henne went out there, facilitated a 98-yard drive. Patrick Mahomes came back at the start of the second half, and he wasn't as effective running the ball. I mean, even though he kind of, scooted a little bit for a first down, but he put the ball into the hands of the playmakers, all right? He got the ball into the hands of McKinnon. He got the ball into the hands of Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, he got the ball in the hands of Travis Kelce 14 times, and they were able to get the job done. And you have to ask yourself, what is going on with Patrick Mahomes, and how would this injury affect him going into the AFC Championship? Now, according to sources, they're saying that he sustained a high ankle sprain. The x-rays were negative, so there's no breakage or anything like that. But anybody that has ever dealt with a high ankle sprain, you know for a fact that it hurts. Like I've done that on several occasions, going up for a football, coming down awkwardly on the side of my ankle, or playing basketball, pick up basketball, going up for a rebound, or taking it thrown to the hole for a layup. And that is one of the worst pains that you can have because it constantly lingers, man. It lingers. Your foot swells up to the size of a golf ball. So it's going to be interesting to see what Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to do leading up to this game. I know there's going to be a bunch of questions pertaining to his health and his ankle, but Patrick Mahomes is better with one leg than some guys are with two. But I mean, you have to ask yourself, I mean, in the second half, they weren't able to be as effective offensively because Patrick Mahomes wasn't able to do some of the things that Patrick Mahomes does in order to pull away from teams. He wasn't able to put on one of his MVP type performances. I mean, a guy has 41 touchdowns this season, over 5,000 yards passing. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do if, Patrick Mahomes is going to be, he's going to be behind the eight ball dealing with this injury. You're going to have to bring your defense. The defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, they really stepped up because they understood that Patrick Mahomes was limited. So they were able to do some things to bother Trevor Lawrence. Shouts out to Steve Spagnuolo. He put a lot of pressure on the young quarterback. He knows that he wants to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and it did affect Trevor Lawrence's time in his head. You've seen a bunch of passes that he was not, wide receivers weren't ready for. Around the time, they turn the raw and the ball is straight in their face, so the timing was off. So you have to give credit where credit is due to the Kansas City Chiefs defense. The secondary, they locked it down. They didn't allow guys like Zay Jones to get open. Marvin Jones, a guy who is known for catching those 50-50 balls at the age of 32, still doing it. He wasn't as effective. And then also Christian Kirk. I mean, Christian Kirk had opportunities to make plays. There was a pass that Trevor Lawrence drew a dime down the field to Christian Kirk. He just could not reel it in. But you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have to say that the future is indeed bright. I mean, you look at Trevor Lawrence, I mean, you can see the strides from year one to year two. Travis Etienne, who was out for the season last year, he definitely seems like he's the answer for the running back position. I honestly feel like you still need another guy, but help is indeed on the way because we know that the Jacksonville Jaguars made a trade with the Atlanta Falcons. So Calvin Ridley will be the wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars next season. So we know that Calvin Ridley is a really good, talented receiver in his own right. So that may be the recipe for success that they need offensively. But the defense is very young, very inexperienced, and those guys are only going to get better as they grow together. But only one team can win, and that was the Kansas City Chiefs. They knocked off the Jacksonville Jaguars by a score of 27-20. And I look at some of these stats right here as I read. Trevor Lawrence, 24 of 39, 217 yards. Travis Etienne, 10 carries for 62 yards. He had a 6.2 yard average, which is above average. Everybody knows you like to hit that 5-yard average mark, and that's exactly what he did. I mean, you look at some of these guys. I mean, they're making plays. Zay Jones, 5 catches for 83 yards. Christian Kirk, 7 catches for 52 yards. Evan Ingram, unlike last week versus the Los Angeles Chargers, he wasn't as effective in this game. So you have to give credit to the Kansas City defense. He had 5 catches for 31 yards. Marvin Jones, 1 catch for 21 yards. Then you also had Agnew, who was flipping the field. Like Jamal Agnew was doing some really good things. So unfortunately, he had a crucial fumble where the Jacksonville Jaguars were driving and they were in the red zone. He caught a pass that would have put them probably around the 5-yard line, but he fumbles the football, and you can't do that. And they had opportunities, man. If they would have punched that in and got a defensive stop, who knows where this game would have went. So that's the Jacksonville Jaguars stats. You move on to the Kansas City Chiefs. You got Patrick Mahomes, 22 of 30 for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chad Henne came in once again when Patrick Mahomes had to go out for a little while, get that ankle taped up. He was 5 of 7 for 23 yards, 1 touchdown. Once again, he facilitated a 98-yard drive, which is the longest drive in playoff history, believe it or not. Also, you have Pacheco, who I felt like was actually, man, this dude was running this ball incredible, man. I mean, this dude was, man, fighting off tackles, breaking tackles. So he definitely helped out his quarterback. 12 carries for 95 yards. Gerald McKinnon, 11 carries for 25 yards. Was really, really great in pass protection. Boy, I wish the Saints had something like that. My favorite team. Wish they had somebody that could pass protect like Gerald McKinnon was in this game. But Kadarius Toney had 1 catch for 14 yards. He also contributed on special teams. Travis Kelce, 14 catches for 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kadarius Toney, 5 catches for 36. Juju, 2 catches for 29. You also had Gray, 1 catch for 27. And Watson, the tight end, had 1 catch for 12. Then you had Bolton, who had 6 tackles, 4 assists. Snead, the cornerback, he had 6 tackles. Reed had 5 for 1. Thornhill, 3 for 2. And you have a couple guys that had 3 tackles as well. So you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they advance. They're going to play the winner of today's game, if you're watching this on a Sunday, between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. Should be an interesting conference championship game for the AFC. So I'm interested to see who is going to be the opponent for the Kansas City Chiefs. And once again, the game today has implications because one winner is going to Kansas City. The other, if they win, they're going to Atlanta. So that's the way it's going to go. Let me go ahead and read some of your comments before we move on. Let's see. Because Jerry, the Bills game versus the Bengals a couple weeks ago was a wash. Exactly. So you had those implications. See, the game had playoff implications, Jerry, because the Buffalo Bills had opportunity to be a number one seed. So if they would have won and then won another game, then they more than likely would have been the one seed. But because that game was a wash due to DeMar Hamlin's injury and the situation that happened on the field that night, then they couldn't play the game. So the only thing that the Buffalo Bills can do was win that game on the next week, which they did, and they had to do a little bit of a coin toss. So that's the way that it went. So that's the reason why the Buffalo Bills would have to travel to Atlanta, because technically, which was totally unfair, you think about it still, even though it's a neutral site game, they still had to play the wild card game. Like, I don't get it. Like, you might as well, if you was gonna roll with it with the Kansas City Chiefs, you might as well just let them play in Arrowhead. Like, it just didn't make sense. Like, it's not like, oh, well, it's a neutral site game. Like, it's fair for both teams. Well, it's still not fair because one team had a bye and the other team almost lost in the wild card round to the Miami Dolphins. So it still wasn't fair in my book. I quit watching television after the 95-yard fumble recovery. Yes, Pammy, I know. In other words, no contest after the Hamlin experience. Exactly. I remember Reebok shoes. Yeah, man, people still wear Reebok shoes. People still wear them. I mean, look, shouts out to the Reebok outlet. I like going to Reebok, man. I like, nostalgic thing. I know people aren't as high on Reeboks as they once were when I was growing up as a kid. We used to wear what you call soldiers, them Reebok classics. If you grew up in New Orleans, you know what I'm talking about. But, man, Reebok classics, they always was a thing. Let me see. I hate to say this, but looks like Dallas might take this one. I don't know if Dallas going to take this one or not. I'll save that one for my predictions. Who that we come in 23-24 season. Hopefully the New Orleans Saints can get it done. But we'll talk more about the New Orleans Saints on the State of the Saints podcast. Also, I want to mention before I get to these conference championship games, I want to talk a little bit about Ed Reed. Some of you already know if you've been following college football. Ed Reed was hired as the head coach of Bethune-Cookman college football team. Bethune-Cookman University is located in Daytona Beach, Florida. We know that Ed Reed played college football at the University of Miami before he had a stellar career being one of the best safeties of all time for the Baltimore Ravens, and has a Hall of Fame bust to prove how great he was. But of course, we know that he was hired by Bethune-Cookman, and I want to say last week there was some very, very troubling videos that were put out by Ed Reed. Ed Reed was very upset at the conditions of Bethune-Cookman's football offices and the way the program was indeed treated. There was a video that he put out. The video that he showed was indeed a video of him riding, and he starts showing like the grass and and stuff like that, where the grass didn't look maintained, the grass didn't look cut. He also like showed like his his office and stuff like that, saying that his office wasn't cleaned out before he actually entered Bethune-Cookman's football office, and he was just very upset by it. And of course, like that, those videos went viral, and Bethune-Cookman University decided to sever their contract with Ed Reed. All right, they said they won't ratify it, meaning they about to give you your money. They not to go and acknowledge it because I guess like the comments and stuff like that, it made the university look bad. And he went to the football offices and he had a little bit of a meeting with the football team. And of course, we know former Jackson State coach, now Colorado University coach Deion Sanders was on the live, and he basically gave him words of encouragement. Right now, from things that I'm hearing that the Bethune-Cookman football team is indeed protesting until Ed Reed returns as their head coach. So a lot of people are upset by this. I had some comments about this, and as an HBCU graduate, I got to tell you, I was very disappointed at some of the things that I've seen, and I'm also upset with some HBCUs and the direction that is going in. I feel like HBCUs need to be very, very careful to selling out to some of these former football players. And I'm going to say that with my whole chest. You got a lot of Uncle Toms out here who, and I'm just being real. You got some people out here that looking like Uncle Toms. I'll just leave it at that. Who, just saying, oh, well, they just trying to do so much. We need to step up. We need to be happy that these guys come along and they want to use their star power to shine a light on HBCUs. Look, I have absolutely no problem with that at all. I have no problem with an individual trying to use their star power to shine a light on HBCUs. But here's the problem. My biggest issue is guys aren't using their star power to shine lights on HBCUs. They're using their star power to shine light on HBCUs to get attention on themselves, to get what they want, which is the bottom line. A larger amount of money from these power conference schools. And people are saying, well, I heard one guy, he tried to use this as a debate. He said, who cares if they stay there for 2 to 3 years? That's attention on HBCUs. Well, riddle me this. What happens after those 2 years? Like, what happens after those 2 years? What happens when it's all said and done? What happens when that guy is no longer there? How is that person's presence benefiting HBCU? See, people will tell you, talk about how Jackson State University benefited from Deion Sanders. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they'll probably benefit from Deion Sanders this coming year and maybe the year after, because you still had guys that were part of Jackson State's program who decided to stay. And most of that has something to do with the fact that a lot of these guys put themselves in the transfer portal and they got a rude awakening about themselves. Not a lot of universities are interested in you coming there. So a lot of them came back. But what happens when you don't have the influence and the power of Deion Sanders to recruit a guy, the star power? What happens then? Then the universities go back to the same state that they were in. See, that's what the biggest issue that I have when you start hiring these star football players. These star football players don't want to sit on the sidelines and be the assistant to somebody else and work themselves through the ranks. They know that universities like the HBCUs will be giving them opportunities. They're not going to ask them for, well, where did you assistant coach? What was the school that you were assistant coach at? What were you the position coach at? They're so excited. They're so wide-eyed and bushy-tailed that somebody of that caliber wants to come in and coach their team, but they're doing it for their own self-gain and not for the university. And you can talk about, well, these universities, they've been struggling all these years. They always struggle. They're underfunded. HBCUs have been underfunded, and they're going to continue to stay underfunded. That's just what it is. Because we need to stop playing. We need to start addressing the elephant in the room. These big power conferences get millions upon millions of dollars from boosters. Their alumni consist of former presidents of the United States, senators, congressmen, big-time lawyers, Wall Street tycoons. They got all this money that these guys can give back to them. Now, let's be real. For all my people that graduated from HBCUs, you graduate, and more times than not, when you leave HBCUs, you're in debt. You owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases that you have to pay back. When you get a job, more than likely, you're not getting one of those big name jobs. And if you do get a big name job, more than likely, you probably would have to leave a HBCU and go to a power conference school in order for you to be respected in the work world. So most of us graduate from these HBCUs, probably get a job that's not going to give us as much money as some of these other jobs that some of these people that graduate from Michigan and Ohio State and all these other universities. So when people say, well, the alumni aren't paying as much money, they ain't paying their dues. Well, If you're making $55,000, $60,000 and you got 3 kids in the house, where are you going to find hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay back to your HBCU? How are you going to find millions upon millions of dollars to get back to HBCUs? And you can use this little thing like if everybody paid $10, it still won't equate to that one check that guy like the booster out there at Oklahoma State can write. So when people say, oh man, like HBCUs are struggling, are you shocked? Because, and yeah, you'll talk about they got some cases where people are doing really well who graduated from HBCUs, but you got a lot more that ain't making nearly as much money as some of those people that are at the top. And I just think that is crazy for us to even have this type of conversation. So when these guys start talking about alumni and not paying this and that, well, you're not at Florida State. You're not at Miami, where those guys can just write a check and all your problems can go away. You can have one dinner party at a power conference school and all of your problems will go away. For HBCU, you probably would need to have 2, maybe 3, and hope that somebody with some big pockets, or deep pockets rather, will actually show up to the HBCU. And also, I don't blame the HBCU. I don't blame Bethune-Cookman for this. You know who I blame? I blame Ed Reed. Because the way that Ed Reed was rolling, in my honest opinion, he rolled as if he didn't even go to the university to check it out. Who takes a job and don't look at what they took? I'll give you an example. When I was in store management, for those that don't know, before I became a broadcaster, I was a store manager. I was working out, in a town, and, I was working at a retail store, and the regional manager offered me a position out in South Carolina where I am right now. Right? He was like, I want you to go run this store out here in South Carolina. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I don't mind doing that. But I need to see where I'm going. I need to see what's happening. I need to see what this store look like. So he was like, okay, fine. So they paid for me to go out to South Carolina. They paid for my gas money. And I took that 11-hour drive to South Carolina just to check it out, just to look at it, just to see what I was going to be up against. Who signs a contract? Who commits to a university? And don't go out there and look at the offices, look at the facilities. Who does that? It seems like to me like he was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and just was excited about becoming a head coach and didn't care where it was. Why? I mean, he looked like he was shocked when he showed up. Who takes a job of this magnitude? Who becomes a head coach of a university, a head coach of a football team, a basketball team, a baseball team, professionally or collegiate? Who does it and don't check out the facilities? Don't know what they're walking in. I mean, how can you feel sorry for a guy that does something like that? That makes absolutely no sense. People aren't really paying attention to the obvious. This is equivalent to signing a contract without reading it. And now all of a sudden, we want to feel sorry for Ed Reed. I don't feel sorry for Ed Reed at all. You brought this on yourself. You had opportunities. You had other opportunities to coach schools. But instead, it sound like to me, based on his behavior and based on like how he was moving, it just seemed like to me he just jumped on the first head coaching opportunity that he got. So how can you blame Bethune-Cookman for this? Bethune-Cookman is just Bethune-Cookman. Like they gave you an opportunity. It was up to you to accept it, and you did. It's not their fault that you couldn't take the time to go down there and see what you actually going up against. But instead, you sat there and waited and then showed up and then was in shock when you got there. And now all of a sudden, like you want to bash the school? No. And I'm not, and it's just amazing to me how these guys who go to these power conference schools and then they come and they coach at these HBCUs and they expect for all these people to move with them. But when the school doesn't have the resources that they're looking for, they blame the school. How can you blame the school for that? I just don't understand. How can you blame the school? The school is only like they're operating the best that they possibly can. But you want this school to commit millions upon millions of dollars that they don't have. Now, like for Deion Sanders, for example, if he goes to Colorado and asks them to write a check for him, they ain't going to do it with no problem because they got the resources. But you can't just go there and just ask a HBCU for a certain amount of money because they would have to rob Peter and pay Paul in order to make you happy. So, I mean, honestly, I don't feel sorry for Ed Reed, but I think that this is a valid lesson to all HBCUs out there that you need to do your due diligence and you need to find individuals that want to be there, that are willing to put in the work for the long haul, that are committed to trying to make the school better, the football team better, the basketball team better, whatever, and not just using this as a pit stop in order to boost up their resume so they can get $4 and $5 million at a power conference schools, because this is not the energy that HBCUs need. Like, and I just don't understand how people are just happy, like content. Oh, like, yeah, we got some attention for a little while. At least we relevant. Like, you can do all this, right? You can be on TV as long as that person be there. You can get this revenue as long as this person be there. But what happens when they leave? What happens when they leave? The school is still going to fall into the same situation that they once were in. You don't get better from that. You don't get better from that. But that's just that's just the way I feel about it. Man, I don't feel sorry for Ed Reed. I don't. That was your fault. Like, you had opportunity to kind of, do some things in order to not be in this position, but you didn't. Let's see. Watch the Eagles-Giants game Saturday night, and it was sad as the Saints fan to see C.J. Gardner-Johnson having fun. Yeah, I mean, look, that was a tough game, which leads me to the next game that we need to talk about, which is the Dallas Cowboys. Well, not Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, versus the New York Football Giants. Man, this was an absolute beating. I mean, 38-7. The game wasn't even close. Man, it just made the New York Giants, it just showed you that there's levels to this. You got a New York Giants team who worked really, really hard to get themselves into the postseason. They won a game versus the Minnesota Vikings on last week. Daniel Jones looked impressive, but he came crashing down to earth. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles saw that footage. They made sure that they kept him in the pocket and wanted him to make plays from the pocket. And we all saw that Daniel Jones, when it comes to him being able to make more plays in the pocket besides running outside of the pocket, it's tough for him. It's very, very tough for him. And the Giants got some pieces, but these guys are young, and they still got some pieces that they need to get in order for them to be competitive with the Cowboys, with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, he was not aggravated with that shoulder injury at all. I mean, we seen him get outside the pocket. He made some smart plays. He ran the football. He gave himself up, made sure that he didn't take any significant damage than he had to take. And also, man, he threw the ball where it needed to go. I mean, he threw the ball to his receivers, and he made the plays that need to be made. And not to mention the running game. I mean, the New York Giants, they had absolutely no answer for the running game of the Philadelphia Eagles. Plug and play. I mean, you can put Gainwell in that thing. You can put Boston Scott in that thing. You can put Miles Sanders in there. No matter who you put in there, they had no answer for the running game for the Philadelphia Eagles. They just dominated. They just hit them all up in the mouth. The defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, they were flying all around the ball. They kept Daniel Jones in the pocket. You had some plays where Saquon Barkley actually got out. But, I mean, the wide receiver group of the New York Giants, they need some significant changes there. I mean, you had some guys out there. You got Isaiah Hodges. He's a young guy. He came along towards the end of the season, kind of helped the wide receiver group. Richie James, he's fast. He's a little bit of a speedster. You had a wide open pass, man. I mean, you were wide open. There was only two things that were guarding you, and that was space and opportunity. And you had opportunity to get past both of them, you know what I'm saying, for a touchdown. And it just plays like that, right? It just shows you that the wide receiver group of the New York Giants, they need to address that. I'm pretty sure they're probably going to be addressing that in the draft. They'll probably get themselves a top wide receiver to be able to help out with that. I think they need a little bit more from the tight end position. I think maybe you need somebody else to complement Saquon Barkley, even though Matt Breida did a pretty good job, but I still feel like you need that change of pace back. Maybe they'll address that in the draft as well as some issues on the offensive line. They're almost there, but they're not quite there yet. But as far as the Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles have done an amazing job this season. I think Howie Roseman, I'll be shocked, absolutely shocked, if this dude don't win Executive of the Year. And some of the moves that he made, most noted is the addition of C.J. Gardner-Johnson for a 5th round pick from the New Orleans Saints, and not to mention they have the 10th pick in the draft from the New Orleans Saints, because the New Orleans Saints made a trade with them to get their 1st round draft pick on last year. So this team is 1 game away from the Super Bowl, and that just means, man, they're going to pick at best number 30, 29, right? 29 or 30, and they're going to have a 10th round pick. So you're 1 game away from the Super Bowl, and you got the 10th pick in the draft. And also, you have to give Howie Roseman credit for this, for bringing in guys like Robert Quinn, Linval Joseph, and Ndamukong Suh, right? Their defensive front is so deep. They're so deep that Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph are backups, right? Because you got Jordan Davis and all these other guys that you acquired. These guys are backups. That's how deep this team is. So you got to give credit where credit is due to Howie Roseman. Should be interesting to see who is going to be their opponent in the NFC Championship game. We're going to find that out on today with the Saints, Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. Read some of your comments, and then we'll get into the games that are going to be on Sunday. TJ Hold Chest, thank you very much for $2. Says no Uncle Tom's up in here. Yeah, absolutely. None of them. Oh, we just happy. We happy. Man, just take the check. That's y'all. That's some of y'all. TJ, why New Orleans Saints hired Dennis Beck? We'll talk about that on the State of the Saints podcast, man. We'll talk about that on the State of the Saints podcast. Let's see. CD made an awesome decision. Well, it wasn't his decision. It wasn't his decision. It was the Saints' decision. It was a trade. It was a trade that they made. That's what Big Q talking about now. Let's see. That Philly Giants game was like sitting through a root canal. Yeah, I mean, you gotta feel pretty bad if you're a New Orleans Saints executive, right, for making these decisions and watching a team that's doing something that you probably was arrogant enough to believe that your team was good enough to do, which is be in the NFC Championship game. But that's what happens. Man, one thing about Suh, he gonna find his way on a championship contending team. Yeah, I mean, look, whoever Ndamukong Suh's management team is, whoever is his agent, man, that guy is a gem, because there was a time when Ndamukong Suh had a choice between going to the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints, and the Rams, and he ended up going to the Rams, and they went to the Super Bowl. Then he had opportunity to go to some other teams again, and he chose the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he went to the Super Bowl. So, and now, he goes and he signs with the Eagles, and he's 1 game away from the Super Bowl. So you got to give credit to his team, man. They do a really, really good job with that. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the key games on today. The Buffalo Bills have a home game, another home game. They're taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals coming off that win versus the Baltimore Ravens. It was an exciting game. We know about Sam Hubbard's 94-yard touchdown run. And he got it was an amazing game to watch. We all know about the situation with Lamar Jackson, didn't play in that game. Tyler Huntley played in that game. But the Cincinnati Bengals were able to get the job done, and they move on now to a game versus the Buffalo Bills. What you have are 2 teams with really good quarterbacks. I'm talking Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Josh Allen kind of struggled last week, We're starting to see a little bit of the turnover bug hit Josh Allen. Now, I think it has a lot to do with Brian Daboll leaving, coaching the New York Giants. I don't think it's a coincidence that Josh Allen has an uptick in interceptions. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones has had a downtick in turnovers. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know Brian Daboll was very instrumental in that. But Josh Allen has been turning the ball over. That's very, very alarming. But you still have some pieces where he can get the ball to. And I think a lot of Josh Allen's turnovers is because he has so much trust in his wide receivers. He has trust in big game Gabe Davis. He has trust in Stephon Diggs. He has trust in Cook, the running back, and Singletary. He has trust in these guys, Dawson Knox. So I think that he tries to fit the ball where it needs to be because he knows that more times than not, then his guys are going to come up with the football. And, but in games like this, you cannot afford to turn the ball over because when you're playing this deep into the playoffs, every mistake that you make is amplified. And there are teams that are ready to pounce on every mistake that you make. So Josh Allen has to be careful with the football. He has to be careful. I also noticed the defense. Even though the defense has been a calling card of the Buffalo Bills, I'm kind of nervous at what I've been seeing. It's been a lot of times where there's been opportunities and, wide open, guys getting behind their defense, guys making plays. There were several plays that the Miami Dolphins could have made last week. Jalen Waddle, I don't know what happened. He had opportunities to come down with some big catches. There were some catches that were considered a little bit complicated, but there were some catches that a wide receiver in the National Football League could have made. So hopefully the Buffalo Bills kind of tightened that up. Also, when you look at the Miami Dolphins, they were able to run the football a little bit. They were able to throw the ball, catch the ball out the backfield. I'm talking to running backs and be able to make some plays. I've seen some sketchy tackling at times from the Buffalo Bills. So they got to tighten that up. It's just certain things that you expect from a Buffalo Bills defense that they have not been doing. So they're going to have to tighten it up because we know that these guys on the Cincinnati Bengals team at wide receiver, I mean, these guys can make plays and they're not going to drop many passes and they are going to hit their head on a goalpost if they get behind you. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Taj Boyd, right? I mean, they got guys that can make plays. And then you have Joe Mixon catching the ball out the backfield and running in between the tackles. He's a guy that doesn't even have to leave the field. So if you're not tackling, this is going to be a tough game for the Buffalo Bills. Joe Burrow is cool head Luke all the time, no matter if he's down by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. And when you have a guy that confident in his ability, no matter how bleak things are, you have to stay dialed in the entire game. The Buffalo Bills, if they're going to have to sustain drives and they're going to have to come away with points, you're going to have to come away with touchdowns, but you want to make sure that you're coming away with field goals as well, man. And you also got to get some pressure on Joe Burrow. You look at the offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals, every single week, I want to say for the last 5 weeks, they lost the offensive lineman. They lost Collins. They lost all these guys that they brought in to seal up the line that was struggling. I mean, I know we remember the last divisional round game when they played against the Tennessee Titans. Joe Burrow had 9 sacks. He got sacked 9 times. He got sacked 9 times in that game. So they thought that they fixed that, bringing in Alex Kappa, bringing in Collins, bringing in some other guys, that try to fix up the offensive line. And now you're kind of resorting back to the way that it was. The Buffalo Bills got to take advantage of that. They got to take advantage of the offensive line struggles for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they got to get pressure on Joe Burrow. They got to speed up the clock in his head, and they got to find ways to make him a little bit nervous and in order for them to be able to come away and be opportunistic with turnovers. But the way that I see this game going, I got to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. Man. I look at the Bengals, and it just seems like to me like this team doesn't really get in their own way. Last week, I can kind of let them slide because, once again, I don't know what happened on Saturday with the Giants and the Eagles, but when you have division foes it's just hard for me to see blowouts. It's just hard for me to see that. Like, and when you see a division rival, division rivals going toe to toe, it's very rare. Like, no matter how bad the team is, you're going to see that team scratch and bite and claw, and the games are always going to be close. So I'm not that concerned watching the Cincinnati Bengals struggle versus the Baltimore Ravens because they know one another. The Cincinnati Bengals, to me, I just feel like they have that it, and that it is Joe Burrow. Like, he is a special quarterback. He is a guy that he gets better as the game starts to go on, when it starts to be nip and tuck, when it gets complicated, when he has a tendency of making a play. And not to say that Josh Allen doesn't. We've seen Josh Allen have that warrior mentality. This is one of those games where this was tough for me to come up with. But I look at the Cincinnati Bengals, their ability to generate turnovers from the linebacker position, the safeties, the cornerbacks. All these guys can get their hands on the football. And I look at some of the issues that Josh Allen has been dealing with as of late with the turnovers. You give Joe Burrow more possessions, he's going to take advantage of that. He's going to take advantage of that. And if they can't, then they're going to come away with points somehow, because McPherson, their kicker, man, we know that he's pretty accurate as well. So you cannot afford to do this. You cannot afford to have these turnovers. So I got to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. And finally, the game that's going to finish out divisional round weekend, the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are traveling to Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy, once again, 6-0 as a starting quarterback. 6-0 as a starting quarterback. And the defense of the San Francisco 49ers is nothing short of impressive. You got to give respect to DeMeco Ryans, who has had interviews for head coaching jobs, justifiably so. And you look at Brock Purdy, a guy who was picked last in the draft, and he hasn't been playing like it. The guy is making plays. The guy believes in himself. He believes in himself so much and has done such a great job that he's making a top 5 pick in Trey Lance look expendable. You cannot get rid of a guy who is playing this well. The San Francisco 49ers have some playmakers, and these guys can get the ball into their hands and they can get yards after the catch. And that is a quarterback's best friend, a guy that can get separation, a guy that can go out there, catch the ball, and get about 40 and 50 yards. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys. Got a good running game, got good wide receivers, but what Dallas Cowboy team is going to show up? Is it the Dallas Cowboys team that shows up in big games and lays an egg? Or is it the team that we saw last week? I'm going to say it's the team that lays an egg. I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers in this game. I think the 49ers are a better team. Dallas may have the better quarterback, as far as like experience, but I just do not trust the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like the 49ers have what it takes with the running game, the physicality. I feel like they're going to bring all that to the table. Even though the Cowboys are a really good offensive team, I feel like they're a finesse team. I don't think they're physical. They remind me of some of those classic New Orleans Saints teams they had. Put up a bunch of points, but wasn't very physical, very, very finesse. And that's what I look at with the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like if you hit them in the mouth, I don't know how they will respond. So I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers in this game, and I have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And for the AFC, I have the Chiefs taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in Arrowhead for the AFC Championship. But I would love to hear from you. What do you all think about this game? What do you think going to be the keys to victory on divisional round Sunday? And who do you have representing the AFC and the NFC in the conference championships? Comment down below, like and share this video. Thank you so much for checking out the Gumbo Sports Podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Previous episodes available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM. And till next time, I'll see you down the road.